Maybe you can walk listeners through like how is SourceGraph different compared to just using like RipGrep or something locally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first I'll take a step back and say, over the years, I've kind of bucketed software developers as like a set of people into like two broad buckets. The first bucket is people who've used code search before, and then the second one is people who have never used code search before. And I find that I have to explain the value of SourceGraph in very different ways to these two subsets of the population. So if you use code search before, if you use something like Mirth inside Dropbox or Google Code Search or TBGS inside Facebook or maybe like Debian Code Search, it kind of instantly clicks because it's very similar to a tool that you've relied on to navigate this other code base that you've worked on in the past, and you know how it fits into your day-to-day workflow. The second set of people, the ones who've never used code search before, it's a much larger set. It's a little bit hard to explain because it's like you said, how there's a lot of search utilities that we already use as developers. There's command line tools like ripgrep or grep. There's the search in your editor, and there's also kind of like the search that's built into code hosts. And so I'll start by, I'll do my best to kind of paint a picture. I'll start with kind of the command line and local search tools. So I think the difference between the user experience of those tools and SourceGraph ultimately boils down to the universe of code that you're searching over, and that is relevant to you. I guess those are two distinct universes. Like, what is the universe of code that could be relevant to you that you might want to know about as you're, building stuff? And what is the universe that is easily searchable by your tool? And related to that is how much friction is involved in any given search. And so with a command line tool or a local editor search, that searches over all the code that you've checked out to your local machine. So as long as the thing that you're looking for is on your local machine, you can find it. Maybe it's a little bit more friction because if you're using ripgrep, then you have to go into your editor and open up, the files represented in the search set in your editor, and then continue exploring. But it's like mostly straightforward. The issue is, what if you're trying to search over something that may not be checked out to your local machine, or maybe you've checked it out, but you're not sure where it is, right? Like, is it in some other repository? You don't want to search over all the repositories that you've checked out locally because that'll take a long time. And so once you start thinking about all the manual effort it takes to look for that thing, most of the times your brain just goes like, screw it. Like, I'm just going to make an assumption or, continue on my way. I'm just going to like not bother with this because it's too much effort. It'll take me out of my current focus area. And as a consequence, you don't end up finding the thing that you're looking for. Maybe it was a particular error message, or maybe it was a function whose implementation you're interested in like reading or understanding, or maybe it's a bunch of examples of how this particular function is used. SourceGraph kind of expands your horizons and at the same time minimizes the friction it takes to search over the universe of code that's relevant to you. So you'd go to SourceGraph with that query, and then the idea is that you can just type in whatever you're looking for into a single search box, not have to think about it, and see essentially everywhere that query or that pattern exists in your code. It could be the code that you're currently working on. It could be code in another repository in your organization. It could be any of the thousands or millions of open source repositories out there. And in kind of today's development world, the universe of code that is actually relevant to you is those things, right? It's quite large. It's not just the code in your local machine. It's also code elsewhere inside your organization and open source repositories that you might be pulling in as dependencies, or you might want to consider using, so you don't have to reinvent a particular wheel. So that's how SourceGraph is kind of better than those existing tools. But the long story short is like it's impossible to convey what this feels like without actually like trying to use it. And so I guess for like listeners who are in this second set of people, what I recommend is just going to sourcegraph.com